So one of the interesting things that I think about technology is that we stand on a foundation of other things that we've learned, and we stand on it so invisibly, it's not even like we're like, oh, there's giants down there that we're standing on. It is seamless to us. And I think one of the things that I can use to make that visible is to talk to you about something that not a lot of you know about, which is knitting. So there's an Icelandic poem from the pre-industrial period that says, since you're almost 4 years old, it's time you were put to work. This is to learn the 3 arts, to read, to knit, and to spin. By the time a child was 6 years old, they were expected to be producing a pair of socks a week, and not like a big chunky socks either, like fine woven socks. And that was just a given because that's what we taught children to do. Everybody learned to knit. All of Iceland walked around knitting all the time because this was their biggest national export. Like hand knit goods, that's what they had to sell because Iceland, all you have is sheep and lava. So that worked out really well for them, and it was just like men knit, women knit, grandmothers knit, people would sit around and knit all the time. So obviously you can teach a 4-year-old to knit, just like you could teach a 4-year-old to tie their shoes, but I never had any success at it because I'm not good at motivation, evidently. So because everybody had this foundational understanding, and I didn't realize how big this room is, so I'm sorry for the people in the back, we had a super compressed language to talk about knitting. This is a lace pattern that I found on my great-grandmother's petticoat. She was from Wisconsin and she made it somewhere around 1910, and this dates from 1904, so that would be about accurate. I've been knitting for 10 years, so I could, with difficulty, decipher what we're saying to do here. But if you follow those instructions precisely, just like a computer would, you will end up with that thing. It's kind of impressive. I'm like, they don't look anything alike. We now have charted knitting, where you can kind of see what you're doing, but charted knitting is a very modern invention. So we're saying, hey, we expect you to know the basics of what a knit is, and what a purl is, and what a yarn over is. We're not gonna tell you. Like, why would we tell you that? That would be dumb. And this continued way through until the 60s. This is a book out of my collection, and it is about making lace to trim a pillowcase, so it's roughly the same style of pattern. And we were really worried about column inches because we were still printing things on paper. So if you're worried about space, you super condense what it is you're saying, and God help you if you get lost, because you will not end up with lace, you will end up with a hot mess. Lace is extremely mathematical, and if you really like balancing chemical formulas, it's the art form for you. I'm really bad at balancing chemical formulas, and the lace I'm wearing was knit by somebody else. But it's really, like, follow the directions, you get what you get, but that only works if you have that foundational understanding. So, sometime in the 70s, we sort of dropped home ec as an expectation. Like, we continued to teach it, sort of, but we didn't teach knitting. Like, how many of you here got knitting in school? A couple of you, that's exciting. Montessori kids? It's usually the only people who are still teaching that. So we're like, oh, we don't need that, that's old-fashioned. Like, we have machines and polyester and double knit, like macrame and free love. Man, that's the way to go. People made some heinous things. But in the early 2000s, a lot of people realized that we had jobs that were physically unrewarding. I don't know about you, but I go to work every day and make invisible things for hypothetical people who may or may not use them. and I'm a technical writer, so my odds are not good. So it's really challenging to feel like you've accomplished something in your life if all you've done is produce some bits and bytes, which may or may not have worked and will be obsolete in 5 years unless you worked on an AS400 machine, in which case you're immortal, God help you. So we sort of went back to our grandmother's roots. We went, how does a person knit? How do I make this thing? My grandmother used to make these beautiful things. I want to make that. I want to make something real and tangible and solid. And it was really exciting to us, and except we had to do it our way because we're like Gen X, millennials. And so there was this whole movement called Stitch and Bitch. And they were very aggressive about that copyright, which was interesting. But it was a whole bunch of people my age who learned to knit, but we did not have clue one. It's not like we learned to knit socks when we were 4. It's not like we learned to knit lace when we were 12. We had 0 foundational skills. So what ended up happening is what I call the Nidhi Effect. Nidhi is a online knitting magazine. It's been around for more than a decade now, and it is so friendly. It tells you exactly what you're going to do. It gives you the structure for how you're going to do it. It gives you a ton of color photographs of how things are supposed to end up. Like this particular pattern has 8 color photographs. It gives you techniques and tools that you may end up using and may not know, like everything from here's how to cast on, which is when you start knitting, to here's how to weave in ends, which is when you end knitting, and how to block something, all of which is assumed knowledge for those older patterns, but we can't assume that knowledge exists anymore. That knowledge has been lost. So we have this more verbose, friendlier, more colorful style. And it works out really well for people who don't know what they're doing. Oh, wait, I should go back. Nidhi also has if you look up here, it says print essentials and print everything. Those 2 modes give you 2 different views of this pattern. The essentials is just the instructions and the charts. And the everything is the verbose techniques and the way you do things and the whole everything you see on the web page. So if you're constrained on printer ink or you understand what you're doing, you only print out the part you need. And if you're a little insecure, you print out the color photographs too. And damn the inkjet industry. So when I was thinking about what a system would look like to me, I have to tell you that I'm not a coder. I don't like with the Ruby or anything. That's not me. I'm very technical, but not in a code sense. So if this example up here is not actually C, I apologize. And Google image search lied to me. That's a thing that happens. But this is what we expect people to be able to understand, or expected people to be able to understand. You have a foundational knowledge that tells you what these loops are and how exactly they work. It's not opaque to anybody who could read this language. It's perfectly clear. You might have to spend a little time on it, but you can get through to it. And this side is Scratch, which if you've had children, you have probably already seen because it is the premier code teaching language for the preschool to junior high set. My kids are really sick of it. They're like, it doesn't do what I want. I'm like, learn a new language. My kid codes in Python, he'll be okay. But it's that same difference. This is for people who know what the hell they're doing and have passed our tests of base minimum knowledge, and this is the friendly, colorful way for people to get introduced. So if we think about it, it's the same event. It's saying, hey, we understand that our sacred rituals of looping code are complicated, so let's give you, like, this actually has little circles to indicate loops. It's very cute. So craft is technology, and directions are directions. I learned so much about technical writing from learning how to knit, because all of good writing comes down to the same thing. You have to tell people why they are trying to do something. You have to tell them what it will look like when they accomplish it. And you have to tell them how to actually do it. And if you don't do those things, you are in fact doing some kind of writing, but it's not good. And that's why you should hire me or a technical writer like me, because I love you devs, but it's not what you've been trained to do. We all have different strengths. So craft craft is technology and directions are directions, but it all depends on what you already know. We have a ton of hidden expectations. When we say, what is a beginner language, and somebody says Python, which is a relatively common beginner language, right? You would start your kids on Python, right? Give or take. You're not like gonna send them out into the world with Perl, are you? So, what is a beginning language? Well, first you have some hidden expectations that are way under the layer of language that you need to think about. So here are some things that we think technologists all have. We think that you can type. Not necessarily touch type at speed, because I've watched y'all work and it's sad. Your fingers aren't supposed to cross over. That's not a thing. But we believe that you have like moderate facility with a keyboard. And we believe that everybody has to have internet access somehow, right? Obviously, I guess you could go to a library if you didn't have it at home, but none of us, I don't think, have ever been driven to that level, like not for years. And we have to have the concept that we are capable of changing something. And I'll talk about that in a minute. And we have to have sequential thinking. If this, then that is a key part of making computers do things. Like this whole timing talk was like, if this, then that, if this, then that. If we don't have if this, then that thinking, we don't make good technologists. And you would think that would be obvious, but it is in fact a learned skill. And we have to have abstract reasoning. We have to be able to say, okay, I'm going to imagine that this set of code is in a container, and I can just call that container and all the code will come and work. How does that happen? It's not really in a container. It's not like I put it in a bin. It's in an imaginary container that I imaginarily call to imaginarily come do something. Like that level of abstract reasoning, while it feels really natural to us, is again a learned skill. Non-coders think that computers have a fixed mindset. Coders believe that computers can have a growth mindset. If you haven't encountered the mindset theory, it goes like this. If you say someone is really smart, that is a fixed mindset statement. They will always be smart, they have always been smart, and if they fail something, they fail at being smart and are therefore failures. A lot of you may recognize this thinking as part of what whispers in the back of your head at night when you think you're a terrible person. Growth mindset is, you worked really hard, that was a clever solution. This one time, you have fulfilled my hopes. Taking it away from the essential nature to the action is super empowering. Because if we make something essential nature, we can't change it. And if we make it action, we can always do better. So non-coders think that computers have a fixed mindset. And mostly they believe that the fixed mindset of computers is hatred for them. I can't say that they're wrong. My girlfriend finds it super hilarious that I apologize to automatic doors when they get opened late, and that I thank the ATM when it gives me money. I'm like, I would thank anybody who gave me money. But I have this mindset that even machines that are designed to do a certain thing have chosen to do it for me. Like, thank you for giving me this money this one time. So I have a really growth-oriented mindset toward machinery and computers, but I think a lot of people who don't work with them all the time are like, it just does the one thing, right? Like, it's my internet machine. And so I think we need to think about the fact that not everybody is coming into this believing that computers can have their minds changed. And the last thing that we all expect people to have is privilege. And we don't think about it a ton until we're like, oh, hey, we are a bunch of white dudes sitting in a room. Awesome. And I love you, but there's a lot of different axes of privilege that we expect people to have. We expect them to be able to see the screen. We expect them to have learned to read by 3rd grade. We expect them to be able to handle fluorescent lighting in an office situation. We expect them to sit in a room with other people and still get work done. It's miraculous to me. We all don't see our privilege because whatever privileges we have enabled us to get here. Even if we have countermanding difficulties, we have enough privilege to cancel that out. So every time we look around us, we're like, oh, this is normal, this is me, I am the baseline. Obviously, it's not that hard. It's not like that. And I think if you think about it, you know that, but it's our automatic reaction. So we're not all starting at the same place. We're not all the same level of capable on a number of different axes. This is a picture of Adam Clayton Powell that I took when I went to Harlem a couple weeks ago. And I love this statue because he's not only walking into the wind, he's also walking uphill. Like, this is not a statue of a guy who gets to sit on a horse. He is working against 2 different forces to go the direction that he knows he needs to go. So think about how much people are working to get someplace they want to go. It's a long way from knitting. But let's talk about some key concepts. Key concepts are the things that we believe everybody's going to have in order to understand. I don't think we need to worry about languages. Like, we need to learn languages to get things done, but we need to understand key concepts a lot more because we are going to continue building layers of abstraction on top of binary. Like, we just get further and further away from the silicone, and that's fine. That's good because we think in different ways. We've stopped thinking about servers as like pets, right? And we've stopped thinking about servers really even as farm animals, as our herd. I think we think of them more as bacteria now. Like, this petri dish has gone wrong, let's just bleach it and start over. And we expect them to inform each other and form their own ecosystems without our particular intervention. So it's much more important that we teach people the key concepts and how to understand layers of abstraction than it is to teach them anything specific. So what I'm saying is, what we should be teaching is more nitty and less gatekeeping. I don't want to see any of you saying, hey, if you can't pass this one abstract interview test, you obviously don't understand enough. I want you to say, hey, explain the concept of what you're doing here. Show me, not in code, but in theory, what you're trying to achieve, because I want to know how you think. How you code is obsolete. Like, by the time you get hired, you still have to get brought up to the special, unique language of wherever you're at. So it doesn't matter. How you think is really essential to how you're going to operate. So how do I help people do this? Well, I'm going to say analytics to the rescue. When somebody comes in to use your product, set analytics on it and watch where they go. Watch where they fail. Like, everybody follows a path until they stop. Are they stopping because they had the optimistic timekeeping where they got it right? Or are they stopping because they hit a problem and they timed out because they can't handle what you're saying? Think about what it is that people are stopping at. And watch the tool. What are people hitting? What are people asking for? What is exciting to them? I give a talk on writing for developers, and I say, if you could solve the top 20 support questions by code or by instruction, you would solve almost all of your support questions and leave only the interesting, gnarly ones to work on. Because there are so many repetitive problems that fall in the middle of a normal distribution curve. So watch your tool and see where your normal distribution curve says you're failing. And watch your back. So it turns out that people don't actually like asking a product for help. By the time anybody thinks about reading documentation, they're already angry. And I've just come to accept this is my lot in life. Anybody who's reading documentation already angry because they couldn't do the thing that they wanted to do. And they don't trust the tool because you didn't make it obvious. So what you want to do is watch where they're actually talking to each other, which might be Stack Overflow, and it might be an IRC channel if you're old school, a Slack channel if you're new school, a bulletin board if you're in academia. Like wherever it is that people are talking to each other, watch what they're doing and figure out what obvious thing to you is not obvious to them, because that's really going to let you help them. So this is Ravelry. It is the Stack Overflow of the knitting world. And I was looking at it like in the abstract. I'm like, that looks super overwhelming. Do I have a pointer on this? No. But what it's saying here is, this is one pattern. You can download it. It has this rating. This is how many people have made it, and if you click on that tab, you can see 5,442 pictures of other people's interpretations of this project. Well, no, more like 3,000. Not everybody takes pictures, but you'll get a good idea. People have blogged about it, like as a review, or here's how it felt to make it, and commented on it. Wow, it's really nice that you made this pattern. And made posts on it. Hey, I'm looking for a good market bag. Do you have any suggestions? I'm looking to reuse this kind of yarn. And if you scroll down, it says like, it was made with this kind of yarn, but you could use these other kinds of yarn to substitute. Here's a link to buy them. They have to make money somehow. And I'm like, why don't we have this for code modules? Like, why can't we take this beautiful, vibrant, exciting community and say, hey, 5,442 people have used this module, and here's what they did with it. This is like examples. Here's what people have done with the API. Here's how we implemented the API. You can't do that for everything. I mean, we have secrets. We're good about our corporate secrets, but there's a lot of things that you could share. And I'd love to see a more diverse, inclusive, exciting community doing something like this. So here are the goals for your product. You want it to be searchable. You need people to be able to find it, and you need people to be able to find things in it, which means you need to add proper tags. I got another doc on that. You can look it up later. You need it to be multi-level. You need to be like, I am just here for the facts, ma'am. Please just give me the endpoints and go away. And you also need the extravagant pictures and examples and implementation details. You need to have both of those, because not everyone coming in is you, and not everyone coming in understands what you're doing. You need it to be tunable. Like, you want to be able to say, hey, I don't look at pictures, or I am not interested in anything that has to do with Ruby. And you need to be able to just shut those things off so that they're not distracting. You need it to be adaptive. You need it to learn what people want, so it will offer up better solutions as time goes on, because the more you offer people the right solution the first time, the more they stick around and don't go looking somewhere else. And you want it to be communal, because we can't do this alone. None of us are actually working in isolation. And if we act like it, we are much weaker than we would be if we talk to each other more regularly. So be more communal and share more about your product. I know that we can't fix the entire educational system in order to teach people high-level computer concepts right now. And I know that we can't change the entire way we hire and fire people or evaluate them. And I know that we can't create beautiful new web platforms to share our code right this minute. But I do know that this is what we can do. Start where you are. Use what you have to hand. Do what you can, and you will have done something. Thank you.